Film has a way of immersing the viewer in a way that other art forms cannot replicate. And for films to be made, you need capable cinematographers as well as a toolbox of cinematic techniques to capture the audience's attention. One such technique is the long take. Now, they may take huge amounts of work to pull off, but if done right, they have the power of drawing the viewer in pure cinematic magic, and pulling off a great long take is as exciting to do as it is for viewers to see. The long take has become somewhat of a trend in recent years, with the success of films such as Gravity in 2013, followed by 2015's The Revenant, both of which were shot by cinematographer Emanuel Civo-Lubezki. Other popular examples include the fantastic 4-minute opening of the 007 film Spectre, and more recently, the 2019 film 1917, which was made to look like one entire take that evokes the feeling of a fast-paced first-person shooter game, and would eventually lead to Roger Deakins' second Academy Award for Best Cinematography.
Every time you do. But you work.
So what is a long take? It's a cinematic technique that comprises of an individual shot, and its duration is lengthened much longer than that of the film's edited pace. And more often than not, a long take contains complex staging and blocking, character action, and meticulous camera movement. An early example of a long take is the 1902 French silent film A Trip to the Moon. According to Larry Engel, a professor at Columbia University, A Trip to the Moon demonstrates an early use of long takes, albeit ones that tended more toward the theatrical than the cinematic. He further elaborates that the long take technique was not an aesthetic choice upon its initial use. In the early days of cinema, filmmakers had no choice but to shoot their works in one continuous take until the film stock ran out. And even as it became technically possible to have cuts in films, the finished product would often still look more like a staged performance, with a static camera stringing together a series of narrative sections, much like A Trip to the Moon. Fast forward a few years later, we begin to see an evolution of the long take as we know it today, in 1927 with F.W. Murnau's Sunrise, A Song of Two Humans, and shot by cinematographers Charles Rocher and Carl Struess, and would garner them the first Academy Award for Best Cinematography. In the shot from Sunrise, we see a farmer leave his wife to secretly meet with a woman from the big city. And under the moonlight, they embrace each other with a passionate kiss. In 1937, we're given one of Alfred Hitchcock's earliest attempts of the long take, with Young and Innocent. With the teamwork of cinematographer Bernard Knowles, we're shown an elaborate, lengthy crane shot which glides over the reception, then the restaurant, and right up to the drummer.
Every man who plays in the band is wonderful too. I've got to give credit where credit is due.
So why do long takes captivate the audience in such a profound way? Well, it may have to do with its depiction of reality. And I know that sounds like a stretch considering that we don't view the world in a first-person shooter perspective, but in actuality, it has to do with a long take's relation to time. In the article The Long Take by Brian Henderson, he references French film theorist and critic André Bazin's theory of realism, which Bazin states that realism is both the essence of cinema and a rhetoric whose keys were simplicity, purity, and transparency. Furthermore, Henderson states that Bazin is most concerned with cinema's relation to reality. Bazin analyzes and defends the long take on very different grounds. He favors it first of all for its temporal realism. The long take's time is the event's time within the film. This is further discussed in the 2017 book, The Long Take. Author Lutz Kopnick further elaborates on Bazin's theory in regards to how spectators view the cinematic technique as a way to connect the world within the film to their own temporal reality. Kopnick writes, "The long take is about visual strategies that reckon with viewers who approach screens not as self-effacing windows onto the representations of other worlds, but as dynamic architectural elements of their own world. In an interview with British cinematographer Sean Bobbitt discusses his work on the 2018 crime thriller Widows and his use of the long take in regards to how temporal relation creates the illusion of the viewer being immersed within the reality of the narrative, creating a dramatic scene. A lot of thought goes into how violence is going to be depicted. A lot of the time, the idea is not to glamorize the violence, but to make it as real as we can. By using a long continuous shot in association with violence, it takes you away from the conscious idea that you're watching a movie. As the audience, you're drawn in deeper into the action by the lack of the cut. If you don't put a cut, then you have no escape, so the violence compounds itself to great dramatic effect.
¿De qué eres?
By implementing a long take, it forces the audience to engage more into what is happening within the film. Because of the long take's temporal relation between the real world and in the films, it gives the illusion to the audience that if they don't pay attention to what's occurring, the events before them will pass through time and will never come back again, much like in the real world.